Maria Lopez woke before the sun had a chance to peek over the rooftops. Her small apartment was quiet in those early hours, the only sound a soft hum as she gathered her things for another day at the television studio. She lived alone, save for a timid goldfish named Bruno, and her life was one of gentle routines. Each morning she boiled water for tea, spread 2 slices of bread on a tiny plate, and dressed in the plain uniform the studio provided, a simple black polo shirt and trousers that fit her work cleaning behind the sets of a popular morning show. Maria did not think of herself as special. In fact, she liked her life just the way it was, steady, predictable, and free of surprises. She liked going to work early, before the large glass doors at the studio entrance slid open with a hush. She liked the soft clink of her mop bucket, wheels rolling over smooth floors that would soon be bustling with cameras, lights, and producers with their heads full of busy plans. She liked the way, during rehearsals, the hosts practiced their lines and the crew adjusted cables, until everything felt just right. Those first moments before the cameras rolled were Maria's favorite. She would stand off to the side of the main stage area, mop in hand, and listen to the hosts as they bantered. She recognized their jokes and memorized their catchphrases, even though she never appeared on camera herself. She hummed quietly along with the studio musicians when they tuned their instruments and watched from the wings as makeup artists touched up the hosts' faces under glowing lights. It felt like belonging, even though she was invisible to the viewers at home. The host of the show was Javier Castillo, and Maria found him both amusing and at times a little frustrating. On air, Javier was a whirlwind of energy. He laughed easily, told stories that made people at home smile before breakfast, and teased his co-hosts in a light, playful way. Off camera, he was still loud but less polished. He liked to show off a bit, cracking jokes about anyone who happened to stray into his view. Maria remembered the time he spotted an intern wearing socks that did not match. He called her the fashion rebel, then laughed so hard he nearly fell off his stool. The intern flushed bright red and ducked behind a light stand, but Maria admired her quietly. She thought it took courage to keep working after a public tease. Maria herself had endured small jokes before. New staff members saw her sweeping in the corners and assumed she was shy or backward. Sometimes they called her Quiet Maria, or the cleaning lady. She did not mind. She knew they were wrong when they thought she had nothing to say. She knew she was not afraid of words. She simply preferred to listen. Her voice had always felt like a fragile thing, one she did not trust to carry weight. She feared it might tremble or break if too many people listened at once. By the time the first cue light blinked on, Maria had finished her early chores. She wiped her mop against the wet floor and pressed it into the bucket. She picked up her cleaning cloth and stepped aside, letting the stage manager take her place. The cameras rolled, the host and guests came to life, and the hum of cables and clicks of control panels breathed energy into the studio. Maria retreated to the back hallway, where she organized her supplies for later, watching small monitors that showed the show from odd angles. A close-up of Javier's face, a shot of the audience chairs, the kitchen counter dressed for a cooking segment. After the first segment, Javier broke for a quick joke about weather forecasts. He called the weatherman Captain Raindrop and mimicked a rain dance that sent the crew into giggles. Off camera, he walked briskly toward the kitchen set, where Maria stood ready to mop spilled ingredients from a previous rehearsal. He paused, saw her there, and raised an eyebrow in playful challenge. Maria ducked her head, pretending not to notice, but Javier spoke out loud, in that boisterous voice of his. "Hey, Maria, you've got a nice voice, I hear. Care to share a tune with us?" His words carried easily through the corridor. A camera assistant glanced at Maria and then at Javier, curious. The studio had no rule against surprise performances, but such moments were rare and often by design, meant to entertain by showing someone unprepared. Maria froze, hand on her mop. She hoped he was only teasing. She hoped he would forget. But Javier was already looking around for a microphone. "Come on," he called. "Let's hear that humming turned up to 11. Live on air." Maria swallowed. Her heart pounded and her mind raced. She felt the weight of eyes she could not see, cameras, crew, and an audience at home waiting for the next bit of morning fun. She knew exactly why Javier wanted her. He planned to poke light fun at a simple woman who probably had no real talent. He would joke about it later with the other hosts. She understood that role all too well. The simple one, the bit part, the unexpected oddball. Her first instinct was to refuse. But then she thought of her mother, who had taught her always to honor her commitments, no matter how small they seemed. She thought of Bruno, waiting alone in his bowl, trusting her to return. She thought of the quiet pride she felt when her cleaning left the studio shining. She straightened her back, set her lips, and nodded once, quietly. Javier clapped his hands. "Yes, that's the spirit." He turned to a stagehand. "Bring a mic out here. And someone cue the cameras. Let's do this live in 3, 2, 1. Maria followed him toward the center of the studio. She did not look at the bright lights. She did not smile. She thought of the faces she would never meet, all staring at her through a screen. She closed her eyes, steadied her breathing, and placed her hand gently on the stand where the microphone rested. She felt Javier's eyes on her. He leaned in, preparing to deliver his first punchline. But she did not hear his greeting. She did not see the audience. She only heard one small voice in her head, reminding her of every lullaby her mother had sung when she was a child. She thought of the first song she had learned, the one that made her feel safe during thunderstorms. And when she began to sing, her voice came soft but true, like a river gathering strength as it flowed. Maria's song filled the once empty space between cameras and lights. At first it was gentle, a breath of melody that seemed too pure for television. Then it grew clear, steady, and warm. It carried emotion that made her feel connected to 1,000 faces she could not see. Every note she hit was honest and true. Every word felt as though it had been spoken from her heart. Javier watched, his playful smirk fading into something like awe. The studio's hum of activity stilled. Camera operators held their breath. Producers leaned forward, their jaws slack. For a moment, the only sound was Maria's voice, bright and unwavering, filling the air with a quiet magic. When the last note faded, Maria opened her eyes. She looked at Javier, who stood with his mouth slightly open, as if trying to speak but finding no words strong enough. The audience held its applause for a heartbeat too long, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Then slowly hands began to clap, a gentle start that swelled into a full, heartfelt ovation. Maria stepped back, blushing, her hands folded in front of her. She tried to smile, a small, shy curve of her lips. Javier, still speechless, finally reached for the microphone. He cleared his throat, and in a soft voice he said, "That was incredible, Maria. I'm sorry. I didn't know." The cameras cut away to the next segment, but the echo of Maria's song lingered. In the back hallway, crew members exchanged amazed looks. The studio felt different now, as though it had awakened to something it had lost. The power of true, unguarded talent. Maria found herself standing alone again, mop at her side, but she was not the same simple woman she had been at dawn. Something in her had blossomed, something that neither teasing nor doubt could ever hide again. Maria stepped away from the bright lights and hurried toward the back hallway. her heart still pounding from the surprise of her own performance. The mop lay forgotten at her feet. She closed her eyes a moment, breathing in deeply as if trying to hold on to the magic of what had just happened. She could still feel the warmth of the applause, even after the cameras had moved on to the next segment. She smiled, a small, shy smile that felt new and bold all at once. A stagehand gently touched her arm. "Maria, that was amazing," he said, his voice soft with wonder. He looked around, as if making sure no one else was listening, then added, "Everyone's talking about it. Javier just can't stop praising you." Maria shook her head, her dark hair brushing her shoulders. "It was just a song I knew," she said, though even to her ears the words sounded weak. She wanted to believe that, to brush it off, that something in her chest fluttered with pride. She had done something she never thought possible. She had shared her voice with the world and been heard. The stagehand smiled kindly. "Well, the world heard it too. The producers want to talk to you once we wrap up here. They'd like to feature you again." He glanced at the studio doors leading back on air. "Right now, they're doing a cooking segment. But as soon as it's done, come find me by the wardrobe room. Okay?" Maria nodded, though her mind spun with questions. Feature her again, on air. She had always been behind the scenes. She wondered if she was ready for more of this spotlight. The hallway was quieter now, the hum of the cameras and hosts drifting far away. Maria picked up her mop, slowly remembering her role. She pressed the handle into the bucket, letting the water swirl around, and began to mop the corridor floor as she had done so many times before. But each sweep of the mop against the floor felt different now, as if each stroke carried a new rhythm in her heart. Back on the main stage, Javier Castillo stood in front of the camera, a bit flustered but recovering his composure. He grinned and held up his hands for quiet. "Well, that was not the prank we planned," he said. "But it was something far better. Maria, if you're watching, thank you for that gift. You have a real talent." He looked into the camera, his jovial tone softer now. "Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Let's give Maria a big round of applause." Viewers at home clapped in their living rooms, amazed by the unexpected display of talent. Some reached for their phones to search for Maria's name. Others paused their breakfast cereal to lean closer to the screen. Many sent messages on social media. "Who is this Maria? Her voice is incredible." Within minutes, hashtags began to trend. Hashtag Maria sings and hashtag morning show surprise. In the quiet of the hallway, Maria heard the muffled laughter and cheers from the next segment. She looked up, imagining how the studio looked from the audience's view. She thought of the rows of seats and the bright studio lights and wondered how it felt to be center stage instead of hidden in the wings. Her cheeks warmed at the thought. After the cooking segment, Maria found the wardrobe room where the stagehand had told her to wait. The producers gathered around, a tall woman with glasses who managed the show's planning, a man who handled sound and music, and several assistants scribbling notes on clipboards. They greeted her with warm smiles. "Maria, we're so glad you're here," said the woman with glasses. "We wanted to say thank you for that beautiful performance. We'd love to have you back next week as a special musical guest. Would you consider it?" Maria's eyes grew wide. "Me? Back here?" Her voice trembled slightly, but she felt excitement rising within her. She thought of the familiar feel of the mop handle in her hand, the quiet hum of early mornings and the safe comfort of her small apartment. But that warm, gentle voice inside her, her own voice told her this could be a new path. The sound. Engineer leaned forward. "We can arrange for you to sing one song on air, and we'll record a full performance for our online channel. People will want to hear more of you. Maybe you could sing one of your own songs next time." Maria swallowed, Hard. She had never written an original song, but the idea gave her a spark. She nodded slowly. I'll do it, she whispered. Each word felt strong now. The tool producer beamed. Wonderful. We'll send you all the details by email. Thank you again, Maria. You really surprised us in the best way. As Maria walked back to her cleaning station, she felt a swirl of emotions. Pride, excitement, and a twinge of nervousness danced inside her. She set her mop aside and retrieved the bucket, remembering there was still work to do. But now, each task seemed touched by possibility. Sweeping the floor felt like clearing a stage. Wiping down the walls felt like preparing for a new scene. Each corner she cleaned was a spot where something special had happened and could happen again. Later, when the show finally wrapped, Maria took the elevator down to the studio lobby. The afternoon sunlight fell through the glass doors and she blinked against its brightness. She passed other employees heading home, their faces unremarkable to her before, but today she carried a secret glow. She had sung before hundreds of strangers. Hundreds of strangers had listened, and those strangers wanted to hear more. She reached the street and inhaled the warm air. The city felt alive with sound. Distant car horns, snippets of conversation, birds in the trees. She spotted a small cafe across the street and decided to stop for a cup of tea before heading home. Inside, she ordered a simple black tea and sat by the window, her bag and coat at her side. She watched people hurry by, each absorbed in their own world. She sipped her tea and let herself relax. Her phone buzzed on the table. She reached for it, curious. Her screen lit up with notifications, messages from friends congratulating her, a few from colleagues in the studio, and an email from the show's producers titled, Special Guest Invitation. She opened it with trembling fingers. The email was kind and professional. They outlined the next appearance, asked for her song choice, and offered to provide transportation to the studio. At the bottom, they wrote, "We look forward to sharing more of your talent with our audience." The morning show team. Maria sat back and closed her eyes. She allowed herself to feel gratitude for the chance they were giving her. She thought of her mother, now gone, and wished she could tell her how proud she was. She thought of Bruno, waiting at home, and planned to sing for him later quietly, in her own living room, just to remind herself that her voice was hers, and that it carried far beyond the walls of her apartment. Finishing her tea, Maria stood and slipped on her coat. She walked down the street, her steps light. The sun began to set, painting the buildings gold. As she walked, she rehearsed song ideas in her head and hummed softly to herself. The world seemed full of possibilities she had never noticed before. When she reached her apartment, Maria took down Bruno's bowl and tapped the glass gently. The goldfish swam toward her, thrilling her with its simple greeting. She filled a cup with water and picked up a small speaker. On it, she pressed play for a recording she had made on her phone of today's show segment. Maria listened to the sound of her own voice filling the room, clear and true. She let the song play from beginning to end, tears of joy forming in her eyes. She whispered to Bruno, "Tomorrow I'll sing again." And Bruno floated around in his bowl as if nodding back. Maria smiled. She knew the road ahead would have challenges. Her voice was precious and vulnerable, but now she believed in it. She had found her courage and she would sing again. Tonight, though, she sat quietly beside Bruno, holding the promise of her own voice close, ready for whatever would come next. Maria woke early the next morning with sunlight spilling through her curtains. Her heart fluttered, both excited and nervous. Today she would return to the studio, not as a cleaner, but as a special guest with a microphone of her own. She dressed, carefully in plain clothes that felt like her. A light blouse and jeans, nothing too flashy. She wanted to feel comfortable and true to herself. She ran a brush through her dark hair and tied it back in a loose ponytail. Then she poured a cup of tea and sat by her small kitchen table, Bruno's goldfish bowl beside her. She tapped the glass gently, as if to say, "Today is a big day." She opened her notebook, the one she had bought after her first appearance. Inside were scribbles of song titles and lyrics she had once tried to write, but never shared. She leafed through the pages and found a simple poem about hope. She read it aloud softly, letting the words find a melody. She closed her eyes and imagined how the notes might rise and fall. Then she picked up her phone and pressed record, singing the poem in a quiet voice. Her voice trembled at first, but she held each note steady, determined. When she finished, she played it back. She heard a richer tone than she expected, warm and clear. She smiled at Bruno. He reminded her that she had talent, and talent deserved practice. After breakfast, she packed a small bag. Her phone, a change of clothes, and the sheet with her song choice for the show. The producers had suggested a classic ballad that suited her voice. Maria had agreed, thinking it safe to start with something known. She hesitated for a moment, then tucked a worn lyric sheet inside her notebook. She slipped her bag over her shoulder, kissed Bruno's glass, and left her apartment. The cab ride to the studio felt long. Maria watched city streets pass by. People hurrying, storekeepers opening shops, children walking to school. She imagined all of them living their own stories, unaware that one shy woman in plain clothes was on her way to share her gift with the world. She felt a tremor of excitement, like butterflies dancing in her stomach. When she arrived at the studio, a production assistant greeted her with a warm smile and led her through the glass doors into the bustling lobby. Maria paused to steady herself. She saw familiar faces: the security guard who waved at her, the receptionist who always offered a friendly good morning, the janitor who swept near her station. They all looked surprised to see her at the center of attention. The receptionist mouthed, "Good luck," and Maria nodded, grateful. A young assistant guided her through hallways lined with photographs of past guests, musicians, actors, athletes. Maria felt honored to be among them. She followed the assistant into a small green room decorated with couches and pillows. A rack of clothes stood in one corner. A stylist introduced herself and asked if Maria wanted her hair or makeup done. Maria shook her head politely. She wanted to look like herself. The stylist nodded, offering a small compact mirror and a brush, assuring her that a few brush strokes could help. Maria agreed to a light touch, just a bit of powder to calm any shine under the hot lights. While the stylist worked, Maria sat on a couch and opened her notebook again. She reread the lyrics of her chosen song, whispering them to herself. A gentle rhythm began in her mind. She practiced humming through a few lines, careful to keep her voice steady. She felt her pulse slow as she focused on each word. The stylist stepped away and offered a thumbs up. Maria stood and walked to the mirror. She saw her face framed by soft light, the same face that had trembled with nerves yesterday, but now calm and clear. She placed a hand on her chest and took a deep breath, reminding herself that her voice was hers to share. A knock on the door announced the producer. He invited her to follow. Maria rose, smoothed her blouse, and walked with him down another corridor. They passed the control room, where staff watched screens intently. The producer gave a friendly wave, and Maria smiled back. He led her onto the studio floor, where the big cameras and bright lights waited. The main stage looked larger than she remembered. The polished floor reflected the beams that hovered above. Javier Castillo stood near the center, checking his cue cards. He looked at Maria and offered a gentle nod. Maria approached him, heart pounding. Javier's tone was warm as he said, "Maria, good to see you again. You ready?" She nodded. "I am." Javier glanced at the teleprompter and turned to her. "We'll go live in a few moments. Just breathe and sing your heart. The audience is yours." Maria stood behind the microphone stand. She felt its cool metal under her fingertips. She closed her eyes again and let the quiet settle around her. She listened to the low hum of equipment. She felt the soft vibration of her own heartbeat. Then she heard the producer's voice in her earpiece. 3, 2, 1. Live. Suddenly, the world narrowed to the black screen in front of her and the empty chairs by the audience set. She opened her mouth and began the first verse of her ballad. Her voice quivered at first, but with each line she grew stronger. She felt every word fill the space around her. She sang with the gentle depth of someone who understood longing and hope and quietly poured her soul into melody. She saw Javier standing to the side, eyes closed, letting the music move him. As she reached the chorus, her confidence soared. Her voice was clear and resonant, carrying emotion like sunlight through stained glass. She performed each note with intention, bending it just enough to make it warm. She held the final chord a heartbeat longer, then let it fade into silence. The applause began softly, then swelled into a thunderous ovation. Studio lights blinked, and people rose from their seats. Maria's cheeks glowed, and tears sprang to her eyes. She bowed her head to the audience, then raised it slowly to meet Javier's gaze. His smile was wide, heartfelt, and he offered a respectful clap. He stepped forward and took the microphone. "Maria Lopez, what an incredible talent you are. Thank you for sharing your gift." Later, backstage, Maria was surrounded by the crew. The producer hugged her, the sound engineer gave a high five, and the stagehand who had first praised her beamed. They told her how moved they were, how they had never heard such genuine emotion on the show. A reporter from the studio's online channel asked for an interview. Maria agreed shyly. She spoke about how singing had always been her private joy, how she never thought she could do it in front of so many people. She said she hoped her story might inspire others to step forward with their own hidden talents. After the interview, Maria returned to the green room. She sat on the couch, letting the excitement settle. Her phone buzzed with messages and emails requests for interviews, invitations to perform on other programs, congratulations from strangers who had watched her sing. She stared at the screen in disbelief. She thought of the small woman who had nervously mopped the hallway just 2 days ago. That woman felt distant now, as if she belonged to another life. A gentle knock at the door brought Maria back to the present. The stylist reappeared and handed her a small gift, a bouquet of flowers wrapped in simple brown paper. "From the team," she said. Maria accepted the flowers gratefully, breathing in their sweet scent. As evening fell, Maria made her way home. She held the bouquet carefully and stepped onto the quiet street. The city lights sparkled around her. Her bag felt lighter than ever. She thought of her next steps. Perhaps a small concert. Perhaps recording a demo. She knew there would be challenges, vocal lessons, public appearances, the pressure to write original songs, but she felt ready. Her voice was her strength, and she believed in it more than ever. When she reached her apartment, Maria placed the flowers on her small dining table and poured another cup of tea. Bruno swam toward her, as if curious about the day's events. Maria sat beside him and spoke softly. "Today was amazing, Bruno. I sang and they listened." She touched the bowl's edge gently. "Tomorrow, who knows? But I'm ready." She opened her notebook once more and wrote at the top of a fresh page, "Keep singing." She underlined it twice. Then she closed the book and leaned back, letting the day's joy fill her. Outside, the city was calm under a starlit sky. And inside, Maria's heart was full. She knew the world could be unpredictable and sometimes harsh, but her own quiet courage had made it kinder. She closed her eyes, smiled, and whispered goodnight to Bruno. The simple woman who had once been content to mop floors had become someone else, someone who dared to sing in front of strangers, and found her voice echoing in their hearts. And that, she thought, was the greatest song of all. Maria woke with a gentle ache in her chest that felt like happiness mixed with a hint of nerves. Yesterday's performance still glowed in her mind, but today was different. Today she would meet with the music director of the show to discuss new opportunities. She dressed in the same light blouse and jeans because they felt like her, and added a simple necklace her mother had given her. She packed her bag with her notebook, the lyric sheet for her ballad, and her phone. Bruno swam in his bowl as she kissed the glass. "I'll be back soon, Bruno," she whispered, and left her apartment. The studio lobby buzzed with energy when she arrived. Producers greeted her warmly and led her through the corridors. At one corner, a poster displayed her photo with the words, "Guest performer today." Maria paused a moment to look at it, feeling proud but also a little frightened. She wondered how many people recognized her now, thanks to that surprise segment going viral online. A door opened and she entered a small office. Inside sat the music director, a friendly woman named Camilla, who had helped orchestrate her on-air performances. Camilla stood, smiling as she saw Maria. "You did wonderfully," she said, offering her a seat. "We've had so many requests from viewers asking for more of your music. We'd like to record a short EP with you, 3 songs, live in our studio. How does that sound?" Maria's breath caught. An EP? Recording songs? It sounded exciting but also daunting. She thought of her quiet apartment, of the notebook filled with poems and melodies she had never shared. She thought of her mother's voice, singing lullabies. She nodded slowly. "I would like that," she said, her voice steady but soft. Camila clapped her hands lightly. "Fantastic. We'll start rehearsals next week. In the meantime, think about what songs you want to include. You can do covers or originals. We believe in your voice, and we want to help you grow." After the meeting, Maria wandered the halls slowly, letting the news sink in. An EP meant commitment. Writing or choosing songs, rehearsals, maybe even live sessions with instruments. She felt both exhilarated and unsure. She worried her shy heart might tremble under the pressure. Yet she also felt a spark. This was her chance to share more of herself with the world. At home, Maria poured a cup of tea and opened her notebook. She read her old poem titled "Morning Light," about hope rising each day. She tapped her pen against the page, then began writing lyrics inspired by her own journey. Words came slowly at first, but then ideas bloomed. She wrote about breaking free from invisible walls, about finding strength in her own voice, and about the courage to step into the light. When she finished, she read the draft aloud. She heard her own sincerity in every line. Over the next days, Maria balanced her cleaning job with writing songs. She arrived early at the studio to finish mopping the floors before rehearsals. Then, she joined the music team, practicing scales and melodies. She learned to work with a pianist, following sheet music and experimenting with her own embellishments. The first rehearsal felt strange. Her voice sounded different amplified through studio speakers. She stumbled on a few notes and blushed, but the pianist encouraged her gently, and she tried again until the melody felt right. One afternoon, Javier Castillo appeared at the rehearsal room door. He waved and came inside. "Maria, I just wanted to see how you're doing," he said. "I'm impressed. You've taken to this so naturally." Maria smiled at him. She remembered the day he teased her into singing, and now he was supporting her path. "Thank you," she said. "I'm learning so much." Javier nodded. "You'll be great. Let me know when you record. I'd love to be there." Rehearsals continued through the week. Maria grew more confident. Each day, she practiced her original song alongside 2 covers she had chosen. One, a classic folk tune her grandmother used to sing, and another a modern ballad that moved her. She worked on her breathing, her timing, and her expression. She discovered that singing was not just about hitting notes. It was about telling a story with each line. On the morning of the recording session, Maria woke early. She felt butterflies in her stomach, but also a sense of calm. She dressed in a soft yellow dress that reminded her of sunlight. She ate a small breakfast and rehearsed quietly in her apartment, humming through the verses until she felt ready. Bruno swam close to the glass, as if offering encouragement. At the studio, Camila greeted her with a bouquet of daisies. "For good luck," she sighed. The recording room was cozy. A microphone surrounded by foam panels, a piano in one corner, and bright lights set up for a small video shoot. Maria felt the warmth of that space, as if it understood her dreams. The pianist played the opening chords as she stepped to the mic. She closed her eyes and began her original song. This time, the lyrics were personal, each word a piece of her story. Her voice was clear and honest, carrying the weight of her hopes and fears. She sang every verse with care, letting the melody rise and fall like gentle waves. When she finished, she opened her eyes to see Camilla wiping tears away. The pianist nodded, and the sound engineer gave her a thumbs up through the glass. Maria recorded each track twice, refining small details until they felt just right. She then performed the 2 cover songs with equal passion, honoring the words of the folk tune and the emotion of the modern ballad. When the session ended, Maria felt both relief and joy. She had faced her nerves and shared her heart. That evening, she returned home with a flash drive holding her recordings. She placed it on her desk and made herself a cup of tea. She sat beside Bruno's bowl and whispered, "We did it, Bruno." She played the first track on her computer. As the song filled her apartment, she closed her eyes and let herself feel proud. Her voice, once hidden behind a mop and cleaning cloths, now carried her own music into the world. A week later, the studio aired a short video featuring Maria talking about her songs and performing snippets. Viewers watched her story unfold. The shy cleaner turned singer, the surprise host, and now the recording artist. Social media lit up with praise. Fans shared her video with messages like, "So inspiring," and her voice and her words touched my soul. One night, Maria received a letter in her mailbox. It was from a small community center in her neighborhood. They had seen her video and invited her to perform at a charity event in the local park. Maria stared at the letter, heart fluttering. A live audience, outdoors. In the open air, she felt equal parts excited and terrified. She thought of her mother's advice. Sing for others, but sing for yourself first. She tucked the letter into her notebook and smiled. On the day of the charity event, the sun shone brightly. Maria arrived in simple attire, a white blouse and jeans, and carried her sheet music in a folder. Families gathered on blankets, children chased bubbles, and volunteers organized tables with food and crafts. A small stage stood at the edge of the park, decorated with flowers and fairy lights. Backstage, Maria felt a familiar flutter of nerves. She clutched her folder and closed her eyes, remembering the studio recording room and the warmth she felt there. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage when her name was called. The microphone felt lighter under her fingers than it had in the studio. She looked at the faces in the audience, smiling, expectant, warm. She opened her mouth and began her original song. Her voice carried across the park, soft at first, then more confident as she moved through each verse. Listeners fell quiet. Children paused their play, and volunteers stopped to listen. She sang her 2 cover songs afterward, each note sincere and heartfelt. When she finished, the crowd erupted in applause, cheering and clapping as if they had found something precious in her music. After the performance, people approached her with smiles and hugs. Some brought flowers. Others shared stories of their own hidden talents. Maria felt a sense of community she had never experienced before. She realized that her journey was not just about becoming a singer, but about connecting with others through music. That night, as Maria walked home under a starry sky, she carried a small box of daisies gifted by a grateful listener. She thought of Bruno waiting at home and the morning when she first sang on TV. She knew she still had much to learn, many songs to write, and countless moments to share. But she also knew her path was growing brighter with each note she sang. Back in her apartment, she placed the daisies in a jar and poured herself a cup of tea. Bruno floated beside her as she opened her notebook to a fresh page. She wrote, "Keep dreaming, keep singing," and she underlined it 3 times. Then she leaned back, closed her eyes, and let her mind rest, comforted by the promise of tomorrow's song. Maria stood in the soft light of her apartment one evening, the small stage of her life feeling both larger and warmer than she ever imagined. The bouquet of daisies from the park charity event still sat on her shelf, and the flash drive with her studio recordings lay beside Bruno's bowl. She looked around at the quiet room, its walls lined with simple furniture and her few keepsakes. It had once felt like the only world she knew, but now it felt like a cozy corner of something much bigger. She took a breath and let herself smile at how far she had come. Her phone buzzed and she saw a message from Javier Castillo. "Great to see you shine at the park. How about coming back on the show next week to talk about your journey?" Maria's heart fluttered. She had first worried when Javier teased her on live TV, but now he was one of her strongest supporters. She typed back, "I'd love to. Thank you for believing in me." She pressed send and felt a thrill at the thought of reuniting with the studio family that had given her this chance. That week, Maria balanced her 2 lives with care. She still arrived early at dawn to mop the studio corridors, but now she did so with a quiet confidence. Every step she took through those halls felt lighter, as if the world outside had unfolded just for her. She slipped into the green room before rehearsals, greeted by the same warm faces: Camila, the music director, the pianist, the sound engineer, and Javier himself, who offered a friendly nod as she passed. She practiced her interview answers softly to herself, reviewing her journey from the woman behind the scenes to the singer who had found her voice. When the cameras rolled on that familiar stage, Maria felt the bright lights on her face and the hush of the audience settle around her. Javier introduced her with genuine warmth. "Please welcome back Maria Lopez, our favorite surprise guest and now a rising star." The applause that greeted her was heartfelt, and Maria felt a surge of gratitude. Javier's voice sounded sincere when he asked, "Maria, can you tell us how you found the courage to sing in front of so many people?" Maria smiled and spoke clearly. "I learned that my voice was not just mine. It belonged to everyone who ever believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Her words floated in the air as the audience nodded and smiled. Javier nodded too, his eyes bright. He asked about the EP, and Maria talked about how recording her own songs helped her see her own worth. She described the simple joy of writing lyrics in her small notebook, and the thrill of hearing her stories come alive with music. She spoke of Bruno, her faithful goldfish, who had been her silent listener from the start. As she finished, the applause broke again, and Maria felt the warmth of 1,000 hands clapping for someone who once mocked the very floor she now stood upon. After the show, Maria was invited to a small gathering backstage where the crew presented her with a gift, a framed photo of her singing at the charity event, with daisies decorated around the border. She chose a spot on her apartment wall and hung it above Bruno's bowl. Each night before sleep, she looked at the photo, remembering the line of faces in the audience and the way the sky had been painted orange by the setting sun. She felt peaceful knowing that her voice had touched people's hearts. In the months that followed, Maria's life took on new melodies. She released her 3-song EP online, and listeners praised her honest lyrics and gentle voice. She performed at local music nights, where small crowds gathered in cozy cafes under twinkling lights. She sang her original song about morning light, her favorite folk tune, and the modern ballad that had first inspired her. With each performance, she saw faces light up, people tapping their feet, closing their eyes, and moving to the rhythm of her dreams. Sometimes she faced nerves again, but she remembered her mother's words. Your voice is your gift. Offer it with an open heart. She practiced breathing exercises before each show and reminded herself that every quiver of doubt was just a reminder that she cared deeply. She welcomed each moment of fear as a chance to prove to herself that courage could grow with every step. One day, a letter arrived from a school where young students struggled to read aloud because they felt shy. They had heard about Maria's journey and asked if she would visit to sing and share her story. Maria's heart filled with joy. She remembered how afraid she once was to open her mouth in front of anyone. She wrote back, "I would be honored." When she entered the school auditorium, breakfast morning light streamed through tall windows. Children sat quietly on wooden benches, eyes wide with curiosity. Maria felt her pulse quicken as she walked to the microphone. She greeted them softly and told them about the day she had stood behind a mop bucket and then discovered she could sing. The children listened as she described her first tremor of courage and how a simple song had given her wings. Then she sang her ballad, and the room filled with gentle music. The children closed their eyes and swayed, their faces peaceful. After she finished, the students clapped and some timidly rose to share their own small songs or poems. Maria sat among them listening and felt honored to be part of their stories. That afternoon, a teacher hugged her and said, "You gave them hope today." Maria smiled through tears and knew she would carry that moment forever. Back in her apartment that evening, Maria placed a small vase with daisies on her shelf. Flowers, gifted by the students. She looked at Bruno, whose gold scales caught the lamp's glow. She whispered, "We made a difference today." He floated as if in agreement. Maria took her notebook and wrote at the top of a fresh page, "Sing for others." She underlined it and added a note, "No voice is too small." Time moved gently, and Maria's story continued to unfold. She received invitations to sing at weddings, to record a charity single, and to appear in a local radio interview. Each new chance felt like a new sunrise, full of promise. She embraced each one with humility and gratitude, always remembering the simple woman who had first hummed while mopping studio floors. She kept that woman inside her, a reminder that courage begins with a single step. One quiet Sunday, Maria returned to the very studio where her journey had begun. She walked through the halls, now greeting friends by name, the stagehand, the receptionist, the sound engineer. She carried her guitar this time, slung across her back. She entered the rehearsal room and found Javier there, adjusting his tie. He grinned when he saw her. "Ready for a duet?" he asked. Maria laughed and nodded. They worked on a simple song together, her gentle voice blending with his steadier tone. They laughed when they hit a sour note and cheered each other on, until the song felt just right. Then they recorded it for a special segment, Where Paths Meet. It told the story of two people learning from each other, finding strength in unexpected friendships. When they finished, Javier hugged Maria and said, "You remind me that we all have a voice worth hearing." That night, as Maria walked home under the moonlight, she felt the familiar ache in her chest, a feeling of happiness woven with wonder. She thought of how a single moment of teasing had led to a life full of song. She thought of every person who had listened, encouraged, and believed in her. She thought of her mother's lullabies and Bruno's patient company. Back in her apartment, she placed her guitar by the couch and opened her notebook one last time for the night. She wrote, "Thank you." Beneath it, she wrote, "Dreams begin in small rooms with simple hearts." She closed the book, turned off the lamp, and climbed into bed, her mind humming with tomorrow's possibilities. In the gentle silence, Bruno swam quietly in his bowl, and Maria drifted to sleep with a heart full of music. She dreamed of new songs waiting to be born, of voices rising together in harmony, and of the gift she had found when she first dared to sing. And in that dream, a simple woman's voice carried everyone home.